Welcome to the AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharp, and this week's political headline: after its passage by the House and the Senate, President Donald Trump signed a bill that compels the Department of Justice to release files related to the DOJ's investigation into child sex predator and international financier Jeffrey Epstein. What's truly interesting and very political about all this is the fact that that legislation wasn't necessary. The president had the power to release those Epstein files before he signed that bill, and he can still hold back as many files as he wants. In fact, former President Joe Biden could have done this as well, something LaDonna Harvey and I asked of Democratic U.S. Senator Mark Kelly on Arizona's Morning News, and you can see that on YouTube. Just if you go to the KTAR YouTube channel, had to get a plug in there. So let's meet our guests on this week's AZ Political Podcast. Former Arizona Governor Jan Brewer, who served as chief executive of our state for 6 years, beginning in 2009, when she ascended from Secretary of State to governor following Governor Janet Napolitano's resignation. Before becoming Secretary of State, Jan Brewer served in both chambers of the state legislature and on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. It's nice to have you on the Political Podcast.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you.
Well, and I have to thank her in many, many ways, because I walked out of the studio that I was in before, and I was getting walk into this one, and she fixed my collar for me. It was all messed up.
The mother in me.
I so appreciate you. With the exception of county supervisor, every office that you've ever held is up for re-election in 2026. So I'm going to start with this. Which was your favorite office? Which one did you like the least? And how much did your enjoyment of an office correlate to the difficulty of achieving that office, the election process?
Oh, that's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of different jobs. And of course, whenever you're in a position, you love it generally because you've been elected to it, you ran for it, and you're working with people that you like, and you're doing things that you think are making a difference. So it's very hard to say which one you like the best, I think. But I think probably being governor was, the kind of the end of my career, and I kind of went up through the chain of command, and all my experience below that really helped me because I had, served in the House and in the Senate and Maricopa County, and then Secretary of State / Lieutenant Governor.
Right.
And there I was. So I had all this experience that all governors don't have when they arrive.
Right.
So I had a lot of background information. I knew how everything worked. Yeah. And so I was very vocal about all of it, and I was grateful for all the experience. I think it made me a better governor.
You knew where all the bodies were buried.
Yes,
too, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I absolutely did.
Yeah, right.
And I could find them.
So, you ascended to your first term as governor, which was a half term, essentially. Were you surprised at how difficult it was to run for governor when you did run?
Well, I've always been a lovely campaigner. I love campaigning.
Oh, you like it?
I've always enjoyed it because it's the meeting of the people and sharing things and traveling the state. I always really, really enjoyed that. But it's difficult when you're holding office like governor and then you're trying to campaign at the same time. You have a lot more help. You have a lot more stuff going on, but then you've got a lot of important things going on.
Right.
And it was a difficult time when I was governor. It was the biggest budget deficit in the history of the state that I inherited.
Yeah.
So we were, really cracking the whip and trying to do things to make a difference so that Arizona would survive. And then I had to deal with my Republican legislature, and sometimes they weren't very cooperative. So I had to be very stern and kind of set the limits, and, they would sine-die and I would call them back. So it was a tug of war because everybody had a different method of getting to the end good result. But in the end, we all won in Arizona, benefited from it. So.
Yeah, I mean, you had a bit of a tough time because you had a Republican legislature that was not very fond of the idea of adding a state sales tax for a short while that you thought we needed because we had such a huge deficit and budget problems.
They didn't like that at all because they didn't want to be on the record for voting for tax, but they knew what else we were going to do, so they wouldn't do it. So I finally got them to send it to the voters for me, and I went out and I campaigned for it. This is Jan Brewer that had never voted for a tax increase her whole career, ever. Wherever I was, I never voted for a tax increase. And then I went out there because I knew how desperate we were. We had to do it. And I made it a temporary sales tax. And I went out there and I sold it, and it passed overwhelmingly. And it made all the difference in the world, And I'm glad I was able to do it.
A lot of your time in office, too, was certainly about immigration. SB 1070 was passed. There's that famous picture of you wagging your finger at former President Obama over. I think you took exception to some of the things you wrote in your book, Scorpions for Breakfast.
Yeah, he was a little bit upset, I guess. And I told him I was a truth teller.
Yeah.
And so we had that nice little discussion, and I talk with my hands a lot, and there came the picture. Now it hangs in the Smithsonian Institute.
Yeah, it does.
But he wouldn't listen to me.
You weren't fixing
He
his
was
collar.
not listening to me.
No, but you make sure people hear what you have to say. That's for sure. So let's talk about who's running in 2026 for that highest office that you held, Governor of Arizona. And before we get into who's running from your party, the Republicans, let's start with our incumbent governor, Democrat Katie Hobbs. If you can set policy disagreements aside, just simply based on your knowledge of the level of difficulty to do that job, what kind of a grade would you give her?
Oh, I haven't really given that any thought. I think that she's probably mediocre, maybe a C minus.
Okay, all right.
C minus. Because a C minus.
what would, and not to put you on too tough on the record here, but why would you give her a C minus as opposed to a low B?
I don't think that she's accomplished much. She hasn't changed policy. She hasn't got very many of her initiatives out. I don't think she's worked well with the legislature. I don't think the legislature's worked well with her either. So it kind of goes both ways there, you know?
Yeah.
And I have, I've not talked to her at all since she's been sworn in, but I talked to her before she was sworn in because I wanted her to be very successful for the state of Arizona. So I tried to share some thoughts with her and stuff, But I don't believe that she's got much wind beneath her wings, So it's unfortunate. So with the new election coming up, we have the opportunity to get somebody new, maybe.
A Republican, right?
Yes. Being a Republican,
which
that
you
would
would
be
like
good.
to see. Right, of course. So let's talk about your fellow Republicans. So you've got two sitting members of Congress. You've got David Schweikert. You got Andy Biggs, who, by the way, you butted heads with when you were governor. He was president of the Senate, I believe, at one point.
He was the guy that would sign, he'd die and go home, and then I'd have to call him back. And then he'd sign, he'd die again, and I'd call him back.
All right, so I'm not going to ask you.
We're friends.
Okay, all right, good. And then you've got former gubernatorial candidate and businesswoman Karen Taylor Robeson looking for the nomination. Who do you think stands the best chance of winning the Republican primary? And does that necessarily equate to having the best chance at winning the general election?
I think it's going to be difficult to kind of, right at this point in time, to determine that. I would like to think that it would be Karen Taylor Robeson, but I think Schweikert, who I served with in the legislature, I've known them all. I know them all very well.
Yeah.
I served with Schweikert in the legislature. And I think him getting in there is kind of muddying up the water some, and a little surprising that he did what he did, but I think I have a theory on that too. But I think that as we move forward after the first of the year, I think we'll start seeing bigger issues being presented to them, to have them comment on, and we'll get a better decision, and the public can get to know them better. But Andy is well known. Karen is well known because she ran before, and she's very, very talented. And for full disclosure, I'm the co-chair of her campaign. I want you to know.
Okay.
So, I've known her since she was a young kid, and of course, I knew her father. He was my Senate president, and her brother was served with me as board of supervisors. He was on the board of supervisors, so we go way back. I knew her mother. She was a Goldwater girl. So, I have a long history with her, but I have a long history with all of them. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a difficult time, I think, for Republicans to determine who it is they want. So they're going to have to go out there and they're going to have to make their case.
So I wouldn't say that he admitted this or even said that it was the primary reason, but Congressman Schweikert, I think, is kind of tired of spending time in Washington. Do you think that's one of the reasons he decided to run? Well,
if that's what he says, it must be true. I had a theory. I don't know if you're interested in it or not.
Absolutely. That's why we have you on here.
I think that in District 1, I think that his favorabilities weren't very high. He wasn't polling very well, and he didn't want to leave Congress as a loser. And so he decided maybe he'd just come home and run locally for the office of governor. And that way he could kind of not go out as a loser and be running for another office.
So someone who is co-chair of Karen Taylor Robeson's election committee, who do you think is the tougher contender for her? Is it Andy Biggs or is it David Schweikert?
Well, they're both going to be tough. I mean, running for governor is tough, no matter if you got one opponent or four opponents. I mean, it's tough because they're both coming after you. Everybody's going to be attacking you. She's smart. She's intelligent. She's well educated. She knows Arizona. She loves Arizona, and she can describe what she's going to do. And I think that she's truly a Republican. And of course, then you've got the Trump endorsements that are going to play a difference, but he therefore decided that he would endorse both Andy Biggs and Karen Taylor.
Right.
However, Karen got hers on videotape, spontaneously. So that's a big hit.
Maybe Andy Biggs has got his on etched in a stone or something.
Or maybe he'll get it again or something, later on down the path. It'll be a very interesting campaign because they're all seasoned people, and they've all been pretty successful. But I think in the end, the people will listen very wisely and make the right choice for Arizona. And my choice is Karen Taylor Robeson.
What do you think is going to be the biggest issue in 2026's gubernatorial race? I know this is really hard to predict these things because immigration became, it was always an issue in Arizona, but it was the murder of a rancher near Douglas that really brought it to the top of the list of issues that were important to Arizona back when you were governor.
Terrible.
But any idea in your mind what you think the top issue will be in the governor's race?
I would think that it'd probably be the economy and jobs. Job creation. What are you going to do in regards to that? Everybody's concerned about housing, income. I mean, it's going to be financial. I think it's all going to be financial things.
Yeah, and
And education is always on the top of the list.
Yeah.
Because that's so much of our budget, That's what got me interested in politics is education. So, yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I know this about you.
Oh, you didn't?
No. Okay.
I was going to run for the school board in Deer Valley, and because I went to a school board meeting, and I didn't know much about it. And my husband was with me, and I walked out of there. I said, who are those people, and what are they doing? And I said, how did they get there? He says, they're elected. I said, well, I didn't vote for them. I said, I don't agree with them at all. He said, you probably voted for them. I said, no, I did not. I didn't remember. And so I kept going back to the school board, and I still wasn't happy. So he came home one night, and I said to him, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run for the school board. I think I can do just as good as they are doing, if not better. And I said, will you support me? He said, yes. I said, financially. I knew enough that I knew I would have to have money to run a little campaign.
Right.
And he said, yes. And he says, but you know what, Jim? He said, if you really want to make a difference, you should run for the legislature. I said, me? And he said, yes. And I said, oh, I don't know. That's big time, right? Mm-hmm. And so I thought about it for 2 weeks. He came home, and I said, you know what? I'm going to run for the legislature. Went through the same drill. Will you support me? Give me the money and everything. And I ran. Little did he know at that time that he was giving me up for like 38 years, starting in the legislature, going from the House to the Senate to the board to the Board of Supervisors to the Secretary of State and then governor.
Yeah.
But it all started out of education. And I never served on an education committee in the legislature, but I had their budget. Mm-hmm. I had their budget, so that was a real learning.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
So it's interesting how you get involved in one thing and it leads to another, I mean, it took over my life. Politics took over my life because I wanted to make a difference for my kids and for other people's kids.
There's so many people out there who are trying to not let politics take over their life,
I know.
And, divides in the middle of families. And we got Thanksgiving coming up when people are going to argue at the dinner table and all this. And yet you embraced it.
I did. I wanted to make a difference, and it seemed like everywhere I went, there was always another issue. It was like when I blew up CPS and DES for CPS,
right.
because they weren't taking care of what I call the Arizona kids, the most vulnerable of our whole society. And everybody says, you can't do that. I said, watch me. And I did.
Yeah.
And it was better. It was better because they made them separate. We took them away from DES and made their separate agency.
Well, you made it a cabinet level spot, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting. And we've got we could do a whole other podcast on that.
Oh, it's
what's going on right now. It's just so awful. It really is. You were also Secretary of State, and you ran successful campaigns for that and governor.
34-0.
34? Really?
Elections, yes.
I don't think I knew that about you.
I'm here to teach you all these new statistics. I think it's a record. I think it's a record in Arizona.
Wow. I've got some stats for you I'm going to get to in a
I
moment.
hope they're good ones.
Oh, yeah, no. These are really interesting. And, they kind of make me proud to be in Arizona.
Oh.
But we'll get to that in a second. But first, so the Secretary of State's race is coming up in 2026.
Yes.
All the 5 top, level offices for the state government are coming up. Do you see any of the Democrats more vulnerable than others? Any of the Republicans more vulnerable than others, like Tom Horn or Adrian Fontes at Secretary of State?
I think Tom Horn is probably vulnerable because they're running against Kimberly Yee in the primary. And she's very, very talented, and she's a very hard worker, and she's attractive, and she's got a strong background, a good background history, and she's out there really working it. So I think Tom could be in jeopardy a little bit. He's been around for a while. Maybe they want somebody new and fresh in that office. So that'll be an interesting race to watch. Secretary of State, that's always important. I always thought it was a goodwill ambassador. And when I got in there, then the HAVA legislation got passed, and I had to implement all that new stuff. And now, everybody's worried about elections, and so you have to write the manuals, the election manuals and things like that to set the standards and stuff and check all the equipment. That's your job as Secretary of State. And so there are a lot of questions out there, so we need somebody that's competent.
You actually piloted a lot of reforms when you were Secretary of State, and which, of course, it's up to the legislature to pass the laws that really change things at the base level, but there's a lot of structure that goes above that the Secretary of State is involved with. What's the thing you're most proud of changing when it comes to Arizona elections?
Oh, gosh, I haven't even given that a thought in a long, long time. I don't know. I just know that we were nose down doing so much stuff at the time because of the, probably the ID voting. I think that was really big and huge. I think that it gave credibility. Today, they're yelling and screaming that you need to show ID. Well, where you been, folks? We show ID. We've had it ever since we did the HAVA legislation. Yeah. I did that,
Yeah.
We did ads and stuff, There's things like that made credible changes. I mean, big changes, and other states followed us. And paper ballots. I mean, they're talking paper ballots. We have paper ballots. What do they think they're voting on? I mean, it's a lot of nonsense out there.
But you did away with hanging chads.
Yes.
Yeah.
We did. No, yeah. Now we mark it.
Yeah.
Mark them. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
You had a good memory. See, I need you around.
And you made it much more accessible for members of the military who were on deployment to vote.
I did. I grew up on a base. That was very important to me.
Yeah.
I grew up on a base.
Yeah. So how do you think the legislature shakes out in the next year? So we got a full another year session of the legislature before the legislative elections in the fall. Is that going to change how the legislature does their job? Are people going to pop up and say, I'm the most conservative or I'm the most liberal, and they're going to run legislation that doesn't have any chance of getting, the governor to sign it? We're going to see some of that this election year?
It's going to be crazy. It really is, because I think the Republican Party is a little distraught, and I think the Democrat Party is distraught also. I mean, we've got problems with the Democrats got problem with their chairman, and they went through all of that trying to get their feet landed on ground, and they haven't been very successful in much of what they had done in the past.
Yeah.
And in the Republican Party, we've got a rift going on with our chairman, and Turning Point, and they don't like her, and then she's going to run for office, I guess, in CD1.
Yeah, she was our guest last week. Yeah.
So there's a lot of things moving and grooving out there. So it's going to be interesting exactly how the parties perform, and it's really important, I think. But the parties are split. I mean, they're split on philosophy. I mean, I used to always say I was a Reagan Republican, and now you're a different Republican, I guess. I don't know. You're a Trump Republican, or you're a whoever Republican.
Right.
And I think the same thing's going on in the Democrat Party. They've got some real what we might consider communistic type theories, or more liberal. And then you have people that I know that are more conservative Democrats, farmers, ranchers, people like that. But so it'll be very interesting to see how this year plays out and who grabs that attention, and are people willing to cross over. I think we're going to see more crossover votes. And then we've got that huge independent population.
Yeah, and now
no party.
And now an independent party.
Yes.
Which is kind of interesting because you're no longer independent if you belong to a party.
No, right.
I don't know.
They're just confusing all of us. I know what I believe in. And what I believe in is right.
There you go. That's, if that's the thing, is if you can stick to your own beliefs and you can stick to, and also have an open mind, that maybe I can be persuaded on a thing or two. I think we would go a long ways in politics.
You've got to be able to talk to people on both sides of the aisle, whether you agree or not. And I always assume that it's best to talk to those people that disagree with you, to have that opportunity to explain to them and maybe bring them over, But I see more divide. People who don't even want to talk to each other anymore. It wasn't that way when I was in the legislature.
Yeah.
It wasn't that way. We did good when I was in the legislature.
Yeah, no, and it seems like, when the cameras are off and the doors are closed, that people do seem to get along. They know each other's families, or at least they're rooting for people who have problems in their families. It doesn't, and the party divides kind of come down, don't they?
Yeah, they do. But we all go in there with the same passion. I think that we want to do what's right for Arizona. We want to make a difference. Yeah. And sometimes that gets lost. Pretty soon, politically, it becomes politicized. Oh, really?
Well, it's called politics.
Yeah,
right?
It is. And it's ugly. That's the ugly side.
Yeah.
Ugly side.
So first off, I'm going to show this picture that's on my phone. I'll show it to you first. This is you with my now 12-year-old at Phoenix Children's Hospital. And
look at that.
Yeah, and that's Governor Brewer, who came by to help the kids, and then met my daughter, who I showed her this picture last night when I told her I was going to be talking to you, and she's like, "Oh, I remember that." She's
all grown up, and I've gotten a day older, have I?
No, you look like you're 12 there, and maybe 13 now.
Oh, you're going to be on my Christmas list.
I was hoping. But I bring this up because I've got two daughters at home, and they're both are actually on student council. One in the middle school, one in elementary
Girls
school.
Rule.
Yeah.
Girls
so
rule.
I was going to mention this. So Arizona has a lot of distinction when it comes to female chief executives. We are the state that has had the most lady governors, with 5. We're one of 6 states where women from both parties have been governors. We were the first state to have back-to-back women governors, and the only state to have had back-to-back women governors from 2 different parties. And Arizona is the first and so far the only state to have 3 consecutive women serve as governor. You were the 4th of the 5 women governors, the 3rd of the 3 in a row. Do all those designations mean anything, or does it just sound sexist to you when I say it that way?
That sounds impressive to me, that girls can do that.
Yeah.
Girls can do that. And we make a difference. We put our mind to it, and we deliver. And I think we connect with people. I think women connect better than men.
I read a book years ago. I can't even remember the name of this book. And it said that men at their base level are primarily motivated to rule in politics because it gives them, and I'm just going back to caveman days, it gives them the most access to women in the tribe.
Oh.
Right? If you're the leader, you get to set the rules for all the other guys.
Maybe.
But with women, it's different. The motivation to be in politics is maybe, I don't know, I hate to say a maternal instinct, but you just adjusted my collar out in the other room a few minutes ago, but you say because of that mom instinct. Do you think there is a difference in the motivation between women and men to be in politics?
I do. I think men are more into it for power.
Okay.
And I think women are into it for change. They want to make a difference. Like myself, I wanted to do it because of education. And then as you get further into it, I was always concerned about the kids, the foster kids. I mean, it was those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Healthcare, education. And of course we were big. I did a lot in commerce too. I mean, Department of Commerce. I was very instrumental in that, job creations and stuff. But for the women, and the men, jobs are important to families.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's, but there is a difference. I think there's a different style in governing too.
And do you think that Republican women tend to be more moderate because of those things?
I don't know if it's moderate. I think that it just says that we're caring. I don't think it's moderate.
Okay.
I mean, I think men like their. They like children too, but I think that we because of our maternal instinct, I would think we take it deeper. We take it deeper. We want to touch them. We want to make a difference more. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is hard.
The last time you were on the political podcast was last year, and it was before our presidential election. And I asked you at that point whether you think, since we've had so many chief executives in Arizona who are women, when do you think we're going to see our first presidential chief executive that's a woman? Do you think that's coming anytime soon?
I do. I don't know if it's coming soon, but it's going to happen. Obviously, we've got so many talented women out there, and so many of them are coming up through the groundswell of politics, and they're all over the country. People that really want to make a difference, well-educated, well-spoken, and want to do good things on both sides. I think on both sides of the party. It's just been opened up. And we've set a different standard, too, for the kids your children, other people's children, the kids in school, in grade school even, they're paying attention. They're paying attention to politics.
Yeah.
And whether they pay attention to the bad stuff that we do and they pay attention to the good stuff that we do.
Yeah, so be good at your Thanksgiving table and don't argue with Uncle
Oh,
Harry about
yeah.
politics. Stop.
Everybody's got an opinion, and some are very opinionated, right?
Yeah, they've also
And then some families say no politics. And as soon as you say no, then everybody's thinking about it constantly, right?
Exactly. Wow. I can't imagine, though, that there's ever been a Thanksgiving dinner where politics has not been discussed at your house, though, right?
Oh, always.
Yeah.
Everybody has an opinion, and they don't always agree. But we keep it, pretty tidy.
Yeah. Well, that's
Tied up,
Well, at the end
I
of the
just
day,
say, you're wrong.
and they're like,
Yeah.
well, your mom and you were governor, so we have to.
Who cares what you think?
Right, exactly. That's the way it should be. I like that. Any closing thoughts on what we'll see in 2026, or are you just focused on helping Karen Taylor Robeson and whatever else happens?
I'm very focused on helping Karen Taylor Robeson, but I think I'm going to be looking at all the different elections, and people are calling and they want endorsements, and I'm going to decide who I want to endorse. I'm not going to do anything until after the first of the year because I think the elections just go on and on and on, and by the time you get to January, you never know. Something might change or somebody might mess up or somebody else might jump in. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on, but it's going to be a very important year. Very important year.
Without naming names, have you made endorsements where you're later on like, oh, I wish I would have known that about that candidate, or I wish I would have known that person was going to get in the race, I would have endorsed them instead?
It happened to me one time here in Arizona, and it happened last year, 2 years ago, and I had to take my endorsement back, and I'm not going to say who.
Okay.
But I was very disappointed because the person told me some stuff, and then after he got my
endorsement,
they changed their opinion. She or he changed their opinion. And so, yeah. And so I had to say, under the circumstances, that's not what we talked about, and I just don't want to be on board with you.
Gotcha. So what's the word for that? Is it de-endorse or unendorse? Or
No, but it was very hard because I take my endorsement very, very seriously, and I try to do it very level-headed, and once I give it to them, I'm on board 100%. I'll do everything and anything that I can to get them elected.
Wow.
But I thought that wouldn't be fair. If I'm not going to help him to, use my good name.
Especially a good name at that Thanksgiving table.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you, Jan Brewer. It's always a pleasure to see you anywhere, to interact with you, but it's especially awesome to get a chance to talk with you on camera. I really enjoy our chats.
I take it as a great privilege to be able to sit here and talk to you. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Privilege is all mine. And thanks for the collar fix.
My pleasure.
I don't apparently have a mirror anywhere in my life. And thank you for catching the AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharp, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching the AZ Political Podcast with Jim Sharp. Click the box to watch more from KTAR News and tap the button in the middle to subscribe.